Hi. All right. So this is going to be quick. It's like 185 degrees out, but I wanted to. All right. I'm going to try it this way because it keeps dying again. So I just wanted to come on. I don't know why I'm getting a message that says, quote, the latest versions of some browsers seem to have introduced conflict that is causing studio instabilities when using virtual backgrounds or touch up my appearance figures. As temporary workaround, we suggest turning off all those features while we work on a fix. This was from like 4 days ago. StreamYard. All right. Anyway, my point of being here is a three-parter. I'm just going to play a few things that have struck me recently, and let's see if I can figure this out without shit going haywire. Hold on a second here. Share screen. All right. Let's add these. I don't know if this is going to let me do this or not. Can you still hear me? Hello? 1 2 1 2. Okay, so maybe it's not. Stand by. One moment. Mm-hmm. I'm trying to get this to pull up in the easiest possible way without it going down. God, it's not even, thank you for having faith in me, but it's literally the StreamYard studio. It's like, what am I paying for? Hang on. So there were three things. There's the Stacy Abrams talking about autocracy, which I thought was important. There's a really amazing video of the recently assassinated DFL leader from Minnesota that resurfaced, and I'm really pissed that her assassination isn't getting more attention. And also the recent hearings in the Garcia case, which is going on in federal courts right now to try to bring the Trump administration to heel with regard to the deportation of persons without due process of law. So let me just see if I can pull this up. Stacy Abrams. How's everybody? Let's see. One moment, please. Let me see if this will let me share.
Our next guest is my...
Okay. God damn it.
Minority leader.
All right. Let's see. Share screen. I hate this. Okay. Now, I'm not exactly sure, but this was really Stacy Abrams is great.
What were your duties?
And she's laying down some truth.
Called Georgia House of Representatives.
Hang on.
And my job was to help move their legislation, to explain to them why they weren't going to get the legislation, to convince the speaker to let us move things. And a lot of it was blocking and tackling. It was, the way I said it, my job was to stop stupid or at least slow it down.
Stop stupid or at least slow it down. Anyway, moving on.
Okay. Well, stop stupid or slow it down brings me to my next question. Over the weekend, you went viral for laying out 10 steps to autocracy. Run us through those steps so we all know.
Okay.
Get a pen and paper because we're like, or actually, you can take a listen if you'd like and decide what level we're at.
So this happens in every nation that has become an autocracy, having been a democracy. So whether we're talking about Brazil with Bolsonaro, or India, or Putin and Russia, the Philippines with Duterte. So
I would only add here Cambodia with Hun Sen, but that's just me.
With winning an election, usually the last one you're going to get to have for real.
Yes.
Number two, you have an expansion of executive power. The president decides he wants more than he's supposed to have.
Right.
Number three, you start to make the Congress complicit. So you weaken them.
Check.
And you neutralize or neuter the judiciary. Like, I don't know, the Supreme Court is giving you unfettered power and saying we don't have the ability to stop things.
I mean,
then you move on to firing all the people who know how to make government work. So you gut the civil service.
Gut the civil service. Texas? Anyone? I mean, National Weather Service? Anybody?
Do that because you want to break democracy so people forget the stuff that used to get done. So you can't get your Social Security check. So the CDC doesn't know what diseases are anymore.
I mean,
then you put in place these loyalists, people who are only responsive to you. You put them in charge of the FBI so they go after your enemies. You put them in charge of the Department of Justice, the Department of Defense, so they can signal to their friends and tell them all about the evil plans that you have. Then you make certain that you break how we communicate. So you criticize the media and you create your own echo.
Wait, you criticize the media? You mean like journalists? Like real journalists? Stacy, go on.
Of propaganda. You call it truth even though you know you're lying. Then you go to the next step, and I call that step 7. So at step 7, you have to blame someone. You have to blame people for the broken government, for the broken promises. So you go after DEI. You go after the vulnerable, the dispossessed. You go after any community that doesn't look like what you think power should be. While you're doing that, you make certain that you, in step 8, you eliminate anybody who could help them. So you sue law firms that do pro bono cases. You go after philanthropies and accuse them of giving money to the wrong people. You go after colleges and universities that can teach people possibly what else they should know. You get to step 9 and you start to encourage and incentivize private violence. You send the U.S. Marines into spaces they should not be.
Wait, what? You mean like Los Angeles? What, Stacy? Go on.
National Guard in. You kidnap people off of the streets and pretend that's
what? No.
normal. Because that's how you quiet dissent. Because you make everyone afraid that if they don't do what you want, they might be next. And once you've done those 9 steps, step 10 is easy. That's when you decide there won't be new elections because everyone's either afraid, poor, broken, or complicit.
I mean, does this sound at all like anything going on that you might be aware of in whatever country you live in? I mean, what phase do you think? What phase do you think we are? Do you think we're at, I mean, I would say we're on the eve of 10, right? I mean, when I let's see, what's to go to next? Why don't we go to this next? Because I think that, what was it? 9 was basically militarization of police sending Marines into LA, kidnapping people off the street and normalizing it. That brings me to Garcia. Now, some of you may know of the Mr. Kilmar Abrego Garcia, who was illegally, by the Trump administration, illegally renditioned to El Salvador. And it was illegal because he didn't have an asylum order. So he was not granted asylum, but he did have a do not remove order because there was enough, and this is going back to, I think, 2019. And so he was here in the United States, albeit on a temporary basis. He had gone through the due diligence to at least have like a do not remove order. So what does Trump do? He goes ahead and just, throws him into a paper bag and sends him off to El Salvador. And then the Supreme Court has to get involved and say, hey, you know what? You can't do that kind of shit because you can't. And due process and etc. And the thing is that this is the hard part for people like in the Richard Allen space, because this really tests what people do and do not expect from the actual due process of law. If you believe that Richard Allen's due process rights were violated, but Mr. Garcia's rights, due process rights, weren't, you have a very misguided understanding of what due process is in this country. And that is part of the straight up lying and othering that the Trump administration is doing. Now, certainly we can go back through the ages and there's been a lot of fuckery going on, right? About, the broken immigration system, et cetera, et cetera. But this is a very, very narrow issue that I'm going to be drilling down on. So what Stacy Abrams said about autocracy, basically at the level 9, before the penultimate phase, before we just drop straight off into full-on autocracy, is things that we're seeing now are people being dragged off the street, literally kidnapped. Because if you don't have due process, I don't care if you're a citizen or not, due process is not just for citizens, period, full fucking stop. It's not. And anybody that tries to tell you that it is a lying shitbag. They're a lying fucking shitbag. So, Mr. Garcia was sent to El Salvador through a reciprocal agreement for mutual criminal, and this was a bilateral agreement that the United States has with many other nations around the world for cooperation in criminal proceedings. El Salvador's role in this is dubious at this point to me, but immaterial. Many people have said they shouldn't have taken him, they should have refused. Unfortunately, we do have a bilateral agreement. Who's going to say no to the United States? I'm not making excuses for El Salvador, the El Salvadoran government. What I am doing is putting the onus on the United States, which was and is the only entity that is responsible for ensuring Mr. Garcia's right to due process in the most basic sense is adhered to. The Supreme Court said, you need to get his ass back here. And oh, by the way, setting aside all of the abuse this man who was not afforded. So again, I need you to keep in mind, people who are watching the Karen Reed trial or the Richard Allen wrongful conviction due to, in my opinion, violation of his fundamental right to due process. If you're a fan of any of the cases going on now, that you're really getting into the idea of what due process is, it is the same thing here. You do not have to be a citizen to need and to be afforded the right to the due process hearing. And in cases of immigration, or not even immigration, in the cases of when you're picked up off of the street and thrown into prison without access to a lawyer, or your right to consular access. That's a hot tip for anybody. If you're from a third-party country, even if you're on vacation, make sure you know where your consulate is, and make sure that you know that it is your right under the U.S. Constitution to have your consulate notified if you ever are arrested. It's like invoking your right to counsel. You can invoke your right to your consulate if you're not a U.S. citizen. Now, I hope you're kidding. Because what I'm saying is that they are afforded rights. So I don't know what that is, but uninterested in that. Not helpful. Okay? So everybody has rights to due process. Mr. Garcia is among that. He is now in a Maryland court. Let's see here. I'm trying to find his most recent hearing, his attorney. Oh, the argument, right. Yeah, no. Sorry, I misunderstood. I'm super autistic. I don't know. I don't understand. So thank you. I am open to being corrected. Sorry. The argument people make that right. Horseshit. And sorry for that. But thank you for correcting me. So let's take a look here and see what this is. This is from yesterday, and this is after the latest hearing. And this is Mr. And I want you to, I listened to this once, sort of, from the outside. So I didn't really have a deep listen. So let me see. No, I'm sorry, Torsel. Thank you, Post-Punk Mama, for swooping in there and making them welcome. My hair's on fire. Anybody that knows me that knows when my hair's on fire, he can't be, our judges can't have authority ripped away from them. So that's not true. Our judges do have authority over this particular case. So let's listen to this. He can absolutely be deported. That's not, so I think that we need to take a step back to the idea of due process. So before we even get to the deportation point. So what is at issue here? And let me just start this playing so his attorney can explain this. Because I only play an attorney for my cat in Toot Toot's court. So
my name is Simon Sandoval Moschenberg with the law firm of Murray Osorio. This afternoon we were back in front of Judge Zinnes on remand from the United States Supreme Court, which last night issued a unanimous 9-0 decision affirming the order of the district judge that they need to facilitate the return of Kilmar Abrego Garcia to the United States.
Okay, so this is from, we're going back a little bit further. This is from April when the Supreme Court said you have to bring him back. So this is from April 11th. So this is a little background. This gentleman just spoke again yesterday, but let me play this.
And give him all of the due process that he should have had before he was illegally deported, and that they need to do that as quickly as possible, and that they need to share with the court information about what they're doing. After the Supreme Court issued that order, the district judge issued a further order clarifying her ruling and explaining that the government needs to take all steps reasonable to facilitate the return of Mr. Abrego Garcia to the United States, and that in the meanwhile, it needs to provide the court with information, specifically 3 pieces of information. 1, where is Mr. Abrego Garcia right now? What is his custodial status? 2, what has the government done so far to try to bring him back? There were several days when the court's order was in effect prior to the Supreme Court entering a stay. And now it's been more than 12 hours since the Supreme Court lifted the stay. What has the government done during that time to bring him back? And then 3, what is the government planning to do to carry out the court's order, which is, again, to take all reasonable steps to facilitate the return of Mr. Abrego Garcia to the United States as quickly as possible.
Okay, so that was from April. And so now let me see. I know that there was a hearing in Maryland yesterday. Let's see. I think it was yesterday. One moment, please. So as you can hear from that, how disturbing that is, right? So Mr. Garcia, they started making all these claims about being in a gang. It's as if that was going to be something that, precluded, Mr. Garcia from due process. It doesn't. People are afforded the presumption of innocence prior to guilt, as many they're supposed to be. But also because he had an order that was a do not remove order. And I don't know the exact name of it, but it's different from asylum, but it was enough to put a hold on any deportation proceedings without the due process of law, meaning showing up in front of a judge to be heard prior to deportation. So the Supreme Court, in that instance, in April, told the Trump administration, you done fucked up. You can't fucking do that. And in 9-0, that's like, what? Unheard of. You got to get him back. You violated this man's, rights. And so there was a hearing, and I was just reading. A friend of mine has been covering it. Let me see what to assist in court. So he didn't get, so that was in April. He got back. Mr. Garcia was returned in June. He is now in jail in Maryland. So Maryland, let me just see. Yeah, okay, here we go. One day ago. I mean, there's a lot of really good information out there. And I think that, again, this is one of those cases that is really critical to understanding what some of the issues are surrounding the actual due process of law. And my whole shtick here is that, sure, we can deport folks, but we have to do it legally, right? There is rule of law. There is a legal route to citizenship, to asylum, to do not remove orders, as well as, the ability of the government, if shown that a person is in the country illegally, without cause, without claiming asylum, or with, that there's steps to go through, that a person can be deported, but just follow the law, right? Just follow the fucking law. Where is his? Sorry, I'm having a hard time finding the most recent. Let's see. Adam Glassfield. Okay. All right. Maryland deportation. Just started. So, Joyce Vance. Okay. So this is Adam. Let me see if I can play this. Adam just started, he used to write for Courtroom News and some other mainstream outlets, but he started his own Substack, or his own news outlet called All Rise, and it's covering courts, and he has been reporting from Maryland. Now, I haven't seen this, but this has to do, so this looks like he posted it, earlier today. Oh, it's Joyce. Okay, hang on a second. Let's see if we can play this and see what they say.
We're sort of doing this impromptu little get-together. This is Adam Glassfeld, for those of you who don't know him, legal journalist extraordinaire. And he has just watched the entire hearing in the Abrego Garcia case in Maryland. It gets a little bit confusing.
So this is important. So I was going to, now this is federal court, right? So Adam has been out there doing the Lord's work. Go out and subscribe to All Rise News. He is a court reporter. He's been doing it since since forever. Courtroom News, like I said, all these other, he's very tuned into the legal system, the court system, and has now started his new news outlet, and has gone out on his own. But the thing about federal cases, and I think most people that watch, U.S. legal bullshittery understand that, federal courts and, Judge Gull's court has absolutely no access to cameras or the media, but federal court specifically. So Adam has been going and sitting in on these hearings. So let's see what happens here. Let's see what we find out from today. Again, this was just posted.
Criminal case in Tennessee where the government has charged him with, in essence, human smuggling. This is the civil case that his wife filed on his behalf back in March.
Right.
The case challenging the government's actions, the lack of due process. And so Adam and I were just chatting before you all joined. And we appreciate all of y'all being here. I mean, this was an unusual hearing. The judge, as I so inelegantly phrased it, seemed pissed off.
Yeah.
She did. Absolutely.
Hang on a second. That's beautiful. Okay. So first of all, this is Joyce Vance. So you should follow her as well. But what she mentioned was I think it was human smuggling. She said it was a criminal action that was brought against Mr. Garcia. I think that this is and I don't know anything about that existing criminal case, and whether or not there's any teeth there. But again, innocent till proved guilty. What Adam is talking about and what Joyce just teed up was the civil suit that challenged the deportation. So that's what Adam has been covering, I believe, in Maryland. So that's where we're at.
I was just telling you before everyone else joined us that I can't remember the last time I heard a federal judge remind government attorneys quite as often as she did that they are officers of the court, meaning just telling them, you should not lie to me right now. And there's reasons.
Holy crap, people. I haven't watched this. So, I mean, okay.
She kept saying that. Just starting up with the bottom line up front, she has ordered the government to produce someone to testify under oath about their plans for Kilmar Abrego Garcia come July 16th, when he could possibly be released from criminal custody. That's the date.
Just clarify that for a second.
Yes, please,
He's
Joyce.
in pretrial custody in Nashville. And although the judge up there indicated that there was no reason to hold him, he remains in custody to protect him from being deported until July 16 is a hearing date, right? The judge will hold a hearing to determine these issues. So again, in the criminal case, here we are in the civil case with this coming into play, with the government taking what looks to me like conflicting positions in the two cases.
Absolutely. And she went through all of those conflicting positions. Now, this is why she is reminding the lawyers over and over again that they're officers of the court. One inconsistency: the government still has a pending motion to dismiss, because you remember this motion, Joyce, because they have no power to get the El Salvador government to act. Lo and behold, they filed this motion 6 days before Kilmar Abrego Garcia was indicted.
Wait, what now, Adam? I'm going to have to see if I can't get him to come and talk to me, because what now? Hang on. Oh my God. So, oh my God. They couldn't force El Salvador? Okay, hang on. Go ahead.
The case challenging the government's actions, the lack of due process. And so Adam and I were just chatting before you all elegantly phrased it, seemed pissed off.
She did, absolutely, from start to finish. I was just telling you before everyone else joined us that I can't remember the last time I heard a federal judge remind government attorneys quite as often as she did that they are officers of the court, meaning just telling them, you should not lie to me right now. And there's reasons why she kept saying that. Just starting up with the bottom line up front, she has ordered the government to produce someone to testify under oath about their plans for Kilmar Abrego Garcia come July 16th, when he could possibly be released from criminal custody. That's the date.
Just clarify that for a second. He's in pretrial custody in Nashville. And although the judge up there indicated that there was no reason to hold him, he remains in custody to protect him from being deported until July 16 is a hearing date.
Okay, so that's interesting. I'm sorry. I had to go back and listen to that again. So he's being held in Nashville on the criminal charges, even though the argument is being made in Nashville, from what Joyce just said, that he doesn't need, there's no reason for him to be held, but it's almost like, it sounds like the state is holding him in protective custody until the civil suit shakes out. Is that what I'm hearing here? I think that's what I'm hearing here. So, okay. All right. Okie dokie. That is something. Okay, let's see.
The judge will hold a hearing to determine these issues. So again, in the criminal case, here we are in the civil case with this coming into play, with the government taking what looks to me like conflicting positions in the two cases.
Absolutely. And she went through all of those conflicting positions. Now, this is why she is reminding the lawyers over and over again that they're officers of the court. One inconsistency: the government still has a pending motion to dismiss, because you remember this motion, Joyce, because they have no power to get the El Salvador government to act. Lo and behold, they filed this motion 6 days before Kilmar Abrego Garcia was indicted under seal in the Middle District of Tennessee. A turn of events that the judge slammed as both illogical and highly problematic. Now, how do they walk into her court saying, we have no power over what Ukele must do, Your Honor, and then 6 days later have Mr. Abrego indicted?
Yeah, see, this is the fuckery here. And this is why I hope people understand the deeply important nature of international treaty law, because it matters. The Salvadoran government and I explained this earlier. So it sounds like what they're saying is that Trump went in and said, hey, we don't have any control over El Salvador and what they do, right? Then 6 days later, they arrested Mr. Garcia and had him renditioned to El Salvador. The El Salvador, to catch you up, I think that's what I'm hearing. And so it looks like they were trying to get out in front of something, but just ended up stepping on their dicks, which is a feat because I can't imagine the U.S. government's dick being large enough to be able to step on if one is walking upright. So the critical part of this is that yesterday, it was on behalf of the government of El Salvador, I believe, and I'll have to pull it up. I don't know where the hell it is, but I just got done reading it. It was a notice to DC court. El Salvador making more prisons, but the point is that, we have reciprocity agreements with virtually every country on the fucking planet to aid in essentially extradition treaties, right? So, and that's not even the right word. It's like a criminal cooperation agreements with different nations. So it could be any country, but this just happens to be El Salvador. So that agreement exists between the two countries, and they were trying to say, United States was trying to say that we don't have any control over what they do. Then El Salvador filed a notice to the DC District Court yesterday that it had deposited a notification to the United Nations in New York here that they were only acting in accord to their treaty obligations under the criminal assistance, treaty, whatever the fuck it's called. I can't remember, but they were only acting in accord with that treaty with the United States, and that they would, I believe, that they recognized asylum law of non-refoulement. Now, we won't go down that road yet, but suffice to say, it looks like they are putting something on the record with the United Nations, because that's sort of where the treaties live. To say, well, I mean, they live a lot of places, but typically, they're deposited with the UN. Yes, right, MLAT, exactly. So that was filed yesterday, and I don't have the filing, but let's just see here what these two have to say.
It was an unusual hearing. The judge, as I so inelegantly,
why does it keep going back? Hang on.
In the Middle District of Tennessee, a turn of events that the judge slammed as both illogical and highly problematic. Now, how do they walk into her court saying, we have no power over what Bukele might do, Your Honor, and then 6 days later have Mr. Abrego indicted under seal? So that was inconsistency number one. That was a motion to dismiss that she denied today, along with a separate motion to dismiss, and we'll get back to it.
Can we not leave that too quickly? That's an embarrassment for the government. That's a black eye. They filed this motion saying, oh, we have no control. And then suddenly they do have control. And without any effort, they could have, frankly, dismissed their own motion before this and spared themselves the embarrassment. They could have filed sort of an explanatory statement or had something to say in court this morning to explain to the judge what happened. But in essence, they couldn't. And the best that the lawyer for the government could do was just to say, well, Judge, there were ongoing negotiations and we weren't sure what the outcome would be.
God, that's such bullshit.
Very quick to jump back and to say, but you knew that they were going on. You knew there was a possibility. And yet you represented that there was no chance that you were going to get him back. I mean, it's rare that you see a federal judge who appears to be righteously angry. I mean, judges get angry on the bench, but this wasn't about like a lawyer did something silly. This was about the United States lied to her. Was what this felt like.
Absolutely. And there was another, to take us a step back even further. Folks on this live stream surely remember when there was a hearing where a now former Justice Department attorney called Erez Ruveni admitted that, whoops, we made an administrative error in whisking and spiriting Kilmar Abrego Garcia out of the country. And that was an administrative error, Your Honor.
Whoops.
He was fired for that. Government attorneys went into court and said it was not an error. We did not make an error, Your Honor. Now, today in court, they flip-flopped once again. You had a new Justice Department attorney, Bridget O'Hickey, say, yes, Your Honor, it was an error. You don't need to have other relief because we are not in the habit of making errors. This is a one-time thing. It's not going to happen again. So that was another inconsistency that, again, had the judge remind the government that they are officers of the court.
Yeah, Bridget O'Hickey, who I don't know, I think is a 2023 law school graduate. She was working in the Attorney General's office in Florida, of course, where Pam Bondi came to the Justice Department from. She was hired at DOJ something like 30 days ago. So this is a lawyer who knows Florida state law. Now she's in a courtroom arguing a federal case in front of a federal judge. And I can tell you that those are two very, very different environments. What surprises me is that a case of this seriousness, where the integrity of the government is being challenged, this is a case where you send one of your most senior assistant United States attorneys, maybe your civil chief. This is a civil case, not a criminal case. These cases are usually handled by the U.S. Attorney's Office in the district. And so it's just astonishing that we have somebody from Main Justice in the room with this real lack of a federal pedigree.
See, now I'm going to have to say, I find that to be on brand for the United States at the moment. On brand. To send in somebody that graduated from law school last year with state level experience, period. I don't know, but I lived through the Trump trial here in New York, where he was found guilty of all those felony charges by a jury of his peers, and the revolving door of Trump attorneys for all of his civil lawsuits and all of his criminal indictments and convictions is a lot. It feels a lot like what is happening at the federal level. And so that's like what Stacy Abrams was saying. It's like you start to get rid of the competent people so that the incompetent starts to seem, normal. And this is not. This is not normal. It's not. And again, anybody that says it is full of bullshit. They are full of absolute bullshit. So let's see. I'm going to have to speed this. Can I speed this up?
It can't have been a great position for her to be in.
Hang on.
We are potentially going to see a federal judge in Nashville, Tennessee, order Kilmar Abrego Garcia's release. So what happens after it? Does the government have a plan? Right now, the government's claim is it doesn't. They're going to wait until the defendant is in ICE custody. Then they will decide that the first track of possibilities is they send him to a third country, or try to send him to a third country. Is it South Sudan?
Yeah.
Is it Mexico? Is it Honduras? We do not know. They will not say. On Thursday, there's going to be someone there to testify under oath. We don't know the identity of the individual yet. That's going to be proffered sometime later this week.
Right. But I think the judge asked them to confirm who that individual was by 9 a.m. the morning of the hearing, just to give her a heads up.
That's correct.
It's utterly crazy. Did the government lawyers, did they keep a straight face when they told a federal judge that they couldn't make any plans until the guy was back in immigration custody?
It's asinine.
That's just, it doesn't make any sense, to be honest.
Right. And that's why the judge said multiple times that she didn't believe the representations that the government was making.
Yeah.
And we'll see
Yeah.
what happens on Thursday when they actually have someone give testimony under oath on this.
So one of the things that they're talking about right now is that the third party or the third country. So you can you can deport somebody to a third country. I
will say there is another moment, I would
hang on a second. So and when he mentioned South Sudan, that's not so that you can send somebody to a third country. The Supreme Court said, yep, that's totally fine, but maybe this is something he's going to mention here, but reiterated that country. So let's say you're sent to South Sudan. Let's say that Mr. Garcia is deported to South Sudan because he will be abused and tortured in El Salvador. So we can't send him to El Salvador because he will be tortured there. And that's a breach of all sorts of law, including international and just fundamental, civil rights law. But the United States can send you off to a different country that won't torture you and will agree to hold you. Now, this was a Supreme Court ruling, and it was in the matter of some people that the United States had deported to Djibouti, and the Supreme Court ruled that they could be deported to South Sudan and then I think they had to come back to the ruling and clarify that, yes, they could be sent to South Sudan, but then South Sudan or whatever third country holding the deportees could not send them back to the country of origin where they were facing, torture or discrimination. So it's bullshit because, okay, we're just gonna, hey, trust me, bro, right? Trust me, just fucking trust me. So here's one thing. This is interesting that you bring this up, that people say, get citizenship, don't realize just making being an American Hispanic illegal. And not as citizens, I don't think that they even give a shit about citizenship. Seriously. You think Sandra Day O'Connor once said that there's nothing precluding the United States government declaring me, a citizen of this country, an enemy combatant. There's nothing that says that I can't be de facto stripped of my citizenship by being declared an enemy combatant. This is the thing, people. This is why this kind of shit matters. This is why somebody who, Trump has gone on a rampage about being part of a gang, getting spirited away in the middle of the fucking night to be tortured in a country. It matters because none of us, you think my citizenship is going to keep me safe? Fuck no. Fuck no. It's not. And then how far back are they going to go? How far back are they going to go? What, my dad? Oh shit, man. I guess me and my siblings are going to have to watch our asses. How far back do we get to go? And I'm a dual citizen. What are you going to do? Send me back to, Czech Republic? Great. Oh shit, Osberg's here. Anyway, So that's why this stuff matters. So when we're thinking about, so when there's a community rising up around, the due process rights, and I think that a lot gets diluted. And so when I'm talking about due process, I'm talking about the right to, just fucking appear in a court before you're shipped off or renditioned or whatever the case may be. In Richard Allen's case, he was thrown in fucking prison and tortured. In Mr. Garcia's case, he was fucking renditioned to El Salvador. Right? Who is to say? Who's to say? It doesn't matter. Our citizenship doesn't mean shit unless we stand up for exactly what is happening in this situation with Mr. Garcia. I don't give a fuck what people are saying if he's part of a gang or not. People said Mr. Allen murdered Abby and Libby. People said Karen Reed hit him. I hit him. I hit him. Fuck it. I hope people start to see the connections here. Right? Let's see what else Adam has to say.
You had the one attorney, Bridget O'Hickey, seemed unprepared, but
what?
You had Jonathan Wynn.
Unprepared? But she's a Florida lawyer who just graduated in 2023. And I'm assuming she's not some old ass bag who just went back to fucking UK law school. I'm assuming she's probably in her 20s. She seemed unprepared, a Trump lawyer, unfucking prepared.
You're indignant at what point he told the judge, this is someone you don't want in your neighborhood. And the judge cut him off right at that moment and said, I don't need your stump speech. That this
yes. Again, go and subscribe to All Rise. Adam and Joyce killing it.
About the Trump administration's political messaging about how bad Kilmar Abrego Garcia allegedly is. This is about the rights, constitutional rights and statutory protections being followed, the rules.
Slippery slope, Michael. Where you been? Where you been, boo? Where you been? Yes, judge made a lawyer. Yes. And yes, remind me to tell you sometime about the time that I sat down with the Proud Boys spokesperson at the Manhattan Republican Club. But that's another day. Hang on. Let's see.
Procedures being put in place. And it seemed to me, now what this is all leading up to is a ruling potentially on whether the judge has the power to order his return back to where I am right now, into the District of Maryland, where Maryland. He would be closer to his wife and 3 children. That's what the Thursday's hearing is about. It's about creating a record that if it looks like the government is willing to say under oath that there will be systems in place, that this isn't another dead of night whisking onto an airplane to an unknown country, then perhaps the case is mooted out. On the other hand, if the government will not say where or when they are taking Kilmar Abrego Garcia come July 16th, this can have a very different outcome. And so that's what today was about. And I should add, just kind of to get a bigger picture here, at the plaintiff's table with the attorneys for Kilmar Abrego Garcia was his wife, Jennifer Vasquez Sura. She lives with their 3 children in the District of Maryland, and that's what this is about. Will he be able to await his trial, defend himself from the very allegations the government has leveled at him in the place where his family lives? There's another open question about whether whether he will have a trial, because remember, the government will not say that they are waiting for him to be able to defend himself against the allegations which largely fell apart during his bail hearing, at least some of the allegations that the government leveled at him at the Pam Bondi press conference. But will he be able to defend himself against the charges of the indictment before being deported? The government said in no uncertain terms, and this was Jonathan Gwynn from the Department of Justice, he said in no uncertain terms that they are not waiting. The government pressed him on that multiple times, and they said, no, we are not waiting for the criminal trial to take its course. If he is released, he will be put into ICE custody, and then deportation proceedings will begin, whether it's to a third country or whether it's to, if they try to reverse the order that has barred his deportation to El Salvador, the one they violated.
Now that's okay. Wait, I'm gonna let him finish.
March.
Okay, so he had an order that precluded him from being deported. It wasn't, like I said, and I don't know. Yay! All Rise News. Good. I mean, like I said, Adam's out there doing the Lord's work. But they violated. Yeah, so they violated the. I keep calling it the do not remove order. That's not what it's called. Hang on. Let's see. He had a. Does anybody know what it's called? Luke, somebody help me. It's a. So the United States violated the do not remove order, essentially. And so that's what Adam just mentioned when they whisked him away. I do think it's interesting too, and I would be very interested to go back. Adam says here that the charges against Mr. Garcia, he said, mostly fell apart during the bail hearing. Well, yeah, I mean, I'm assuming it's bullshit. Now, is it bullshit? Who knows? But, I would suggest, again, that people find some common cause here with the right to the presumption of innocence. And the fact that, there was an injunction, but this was years ago when he came in 2019. I would have to look it up. There's a name for it. It's not asylum. They call it something else. I can't remember what the fuck it was. So the injunction, I think, was in addition to that. I'll have to look it up. But anyway, so the government is telling us, like, yeah, we're going to go ahead and throw him into ICE custody instead of sending him to face his accusers, right, in the criminal trial. So, huh?
No, I thought the judge was very clear in that part of the hearing, right? And it came through that the government's intention is not to try this criminal case, which they precipitously indicted, perhaps in a disingenuous fashion, and now they're willing to dismiss because they just want to get this man out of the country.
Right.
That looks to me like a political play.
What?
And we have the prospect that this is a Justice Department and a Department of Homeland Security that are playing to an audience of one. Court cases are supposed to be about the law and the facts. I'm not telling y'all anything that you don't already know. But I think it's important that we not lose our sense of outrage and our sense of shock. Nobody's surprised. It's still shocking to see the Justice Department doing the president's bidding to the point where a federal judge has to tell a Justice Department lawyer she's not interested in hearing his stump speech. And so in Abrego Garcia's original complaint, he asked, and in essence, the relief that he asks for is to be returned from El Salvador. And there was some back and forth about whether or not that had been accomplished, which meant that this lawsuit should have been dismissed. But Abrego Garcia's lawyers, and the judge seemed to chime in on this, made an argument that the complaint went further than that, and it demanded that he be restored to his status quo ante. That would mean being in Maryland, where he was under an immigration supervision order. And the judge seems to believe that that's the most appropriate course of action here. It'll be very interesting to see if Abrego Garcia can get an additional injunction, which will tell the government, no, you can't take him back into custody if he's released. No, you can't deport him to a third country. I'm very interested in your impressions of how good of a job Judge Zenas did about building a record in that regard that would stand up on appeal. I mean, this case has already gone to the Fourth Circuit. We saw that incredible opinion from J. Harvey Wilkinson, a Fourth Circuit judge, really putting the government in its place on the due process argument. And of course, the Supreme Court case had sort of mixed results, but had the impact ultimately of leading to this return. Something interesting that I saw in the hearing today, by the way, was the government wanted to make the argument that the judge no longer has jurisdiction, really lacks jurisdiction.
Oh my God.
To hear this case.
Wait.
And she shut down.
Oh my God. Is Michael still here? Michael Osbrook, are you still here? Because he and I were having a conversation earlier today about jurisdiction and competence of a court. Michael Osbrook, 1212. Because I said, when one has nothing to argue, yup, okay. Did you just hear this? Okay, I want you to listen to this.
Down pretty easily saying, this case went to the Fourth Circuit. Was the government wanted to make the argument that the judge no longer has jurisdiction, really lacks jurisdiction to hear this case.
Lacks jurisdiction. Were we not just talking about this? No, I just played it, Michael Osbrook. Oh, you want me to send you a link? So when I was talking to Osbrook earlier, said something to the effect of, when you don't have anything left to argue, you argue jurisdiction. And it's a good argument. Don't start with me. Hang on a second. I think you mean my argument's a good argument. So that's the way I'm going to take it.
She shut them down pretty easily, saying, this case went to the Fourth Circuit and they ruled explicitly that there was jurisdiction to hear it. And the Supreme Court may not have taken it up explicitly, but the Supreme Court is not in the habit of hearing cases it doesn't have jurisdiction over. This was a bad day for the government, not a good outing.
Absolutely. And to your point, she is very methodically building a record. She is taking each and every argument that the government is making, from jurisdiction, pointing out the absurdity of arguing that the case, that particular matter was undecided when the Fourth Circuit explicitly affirmed it, and that the Supreme Court is not in the habit of delivering rulings in cases over which they have no jurisdiction.
Hilarious.
She very methodically went through each and every procedural issues. It's a why that she ordered the hearing on Thursday. Again, in this district.
Is that Thursday this week or Thursday next week?
That's Thursday this week. They are moving very quickly because, again, by next week, specifically July 16th, we could potentially see a judge ordering the release on bail of Kilmar Abrego Garcia. So that's why there's a tremendous amount of urgency. And that's why she's building this record, but doing it with such speed.
This entire case, it seems to me, is just one misstep after the other by the government. There's the original mistake, and they're back to calling it a mistake and deporting him. Of course, everybody from Donald Trump on down for a time said, oh, no, it wasn't a mistake. This was absolutely what we meant to do. Today in court, we have lawyers telling the judge it was just a one-off administrative error. You don't have to worry about us doing this again. Not a big deal, which again, I think probably was the breaking point for the judge. It certainly was for me. But the reality is, in this country, we have laws that make people who are here without legal status deportable. There is a withholding order in this case. An immigration judge in 2019 said you can't send him back to El Salvador. He came to this country to avoid gang threats that were violent, that were vicious, that were sustained. Sending him back would put him in a dangerous position. And I saw the government's lawyers today saying that they wanted to reconsider that withholding order. Was there more on that, and what did you take away?
That's exactly right, Joyce. What the government said is they haven't made up their mind as to whether they are going to try to deport him to a third country. Again, we don't know what country on the map. Any human rights abuser, war-torn country.
South Sudan, right?
South Sudan, they won't say. They won't rule out anything or narrow it down. On the other hand, they might try to reverse the order that they violated back in March by sending Mr. Abrego to El Salvador. Say that they will try to contest it. It's door number 1 or door number 2, and they won't narrow it down. And that's why we're having this hearing on Thursday.
Well, what do you think is going to happen next? I mean, you've watched the criminal case and the civil case. Where do you think this is headed?
I will say that this case never ceases to surprise. So with that caveat, I did not anticipate the judge was going to order this hearing on Thursday. Now that she has, it seems very clear.
Michael, I put the link in the thingy dingy if you want it. If not, no big deal.
That whatever witness the government is going to put on the stand, I would be surprised if they give a straight answer. If they say, yes, we're going to try to deport him to Honduras, we're going to try to deport him to South Sudan, I think they're going to walk around the issue, and the judge will deliver a ruling potentially accordingly. And then we could see this going up to a head next week. For the record, I will be going down to Nashville, Tennessee next week to see what happens when a judge is going to review. Right now it's before the district judge, and he's reviewing his magistrate's order, finding that the government does not have the authority to detain.
Wait a second. All right. All right. I brought him to the stage. Hey, bud, what's up?
Well, I'll try to do this in a way I hope you don't regret.
Oh, shit. Okay, go ahead. Yeah.
No, I mean, I'm not sure what the jurisdictional argument is, but normally it's not subject matter jurisdiction because the court's going to have jurisdiction over the kind of case, a habeas case, but it's personal jurisdiction, or maybe even standing. So that's another reason to lack jurisdiction, because in habeas cases, it's the prisoner is suing the custodian. So that if somebody's in, and that's why this whole moving people around, they move, what's his name, the guy at Columbia, they moved him to Louisiana, right?
Yes. Yep.
And that's the shell game. Now, the strange thing is that there's Federal Rule of Appellate Procedure 22, and I don't know how it applies to district courts, but you're not supposed to be moving people, and I think that's in a statute too. You're not supposed to be moving people once the petition's filed. You're not supposed to be moving people without, at least without the court's permission.
Well, and did you hear the what's going on specifically right now with this. I mean, I assume you've been listening to this. So with the situation with a pending criminal case, which sounds like it kind of was a ruse, and the civil case, and how Mr. Garcia is being kept in being held basically to keep him from being deported until it's like this crazy mess that's going on right now. And the government will not answer the courts to say what they're going to do with Mr. Garcia once he could be potentially released on the 16th of July. Now, how I don't even understand how that could be possible unless they reconsider his the withholding of removal order. But even then, I mean, I'm not even sure what, I don't even understand how this is going to go down.
Well, it's a little weird that the government's saying, I mean, I heard one interview, I heard one account of it, and the government's saying, yeah, we have plan A, that's probably what we're going to do, but we got plan B and maybe plan C too, and
Right.
we don't know what we're going to do yet. And I don't know that you can force the government to say what they're going to do. Maybe you can. It's
I mean, they did say that
and then hold them to it. I mean,
well, they said they were going to take him into ICE custody. So, I mean, I guess that's an answer, but that doesn't solve for, what does that solve for, though?
Well, it doesn't much. I mean, so, you know, the law is full of all kinds of fiction.
Yes.
But
yes.
the federal government, well, no. I mean, there's a fiction for illegal immigrants who've entered without inspection, as they say.
Right.
And please take everything I say about immigration with a boulder. If you got a boulder, a thing, for your salt boulders at home.
My salt lick? Yeah, my personal
put
salt lick.
About immigration law. Yeah, right, salt lick. But the fiction in immigration law is that someone who's entered the United States without inspection isn't here.
Right. Right. Yeah. Well, yes, but that's part of the problem, right?
Well, what I wanted to say was, sorry, I got some potato salad.
It sounds delicious.
What
Is
I
it
wanted
Polish?
to say was, no.
Oh.
No, the Polish better half is actually in Poland. And I ain't making my own Polish potato salad.
All right. Well.
So the fiction the federal government is playing with now, and is that, like, all these different branches are different. Like DHS is not, DHS is a different person from the Justice Department,
right.
Even though it's all with federal government, right?
Yep.
Oh, we don't know what ICE is going to do.
Right. Right. Oh, yeah. But the facts still. So I guess the point that Adam was making, and you and I spoke about this a little bit, is that the U.S. government cannot at least cannot at this point send Mr. Garcia back to El Salvador directly, right? Because,
They're certainly not supposed to.
Right. But there is also supposed to be the caveat that even if you were to dispatch him to a third, I think one of the countries mentioned was Honduras. Honduras then would not be able to, or at least in our legal fiction, not be able to send him back to El Salvador, because that's where he was escaping from, as evidenced by his withholding of removal order issued in 2019.
Yeah, I don't know that there's anything in the law that requires the United States. So, as I understand it, and all your immigration wizards in the chat or whoever hears this can go into the comments later and do a big correction. I don't think there's anything stopping the government from sending somebody to a third country if the third country agrees to take them. And I don't know. Mm-hmm. I don't know why there could be a wink and a nod that, from Honduras. Yeah. And by the way, we're going to send them to El Salvador. I don't know whether even if the U.S. government knows Honduras is going to do that, can they still send them to Honduras? I don't know.
Well, I mean, they can and they will. I mean, they've shown they can and they will. I mean, this is not what's happening is not a new phenomenon in the world of necessarily in the world of what the government can and cannot do and what it will and won't do. But it just so happens to be playing out through, the lens of, I mean, how many people knew about all this shit during, when all we had were 4 channels, right? On the television. So I think that some form or fashion, this kind of fuckery has been going on for quite some time, but it does matter. And I'm trying to tie it back to how it matters in the most fundamental sense of, so if they do send him back to ICE detention, right, will he then have the right to appear and go through a deportation process, or will they just say, nope, he's going away without being able to appear in immigration court?
So if you've got an order of withholding of removal,
yeah,
because of the Convention Against Torture,
yes, well,
I really can't tell you whether that. I really can't tell you whether that's limited to just not sending him to El Salvador,
right?
I don't know whether a cat. I don't know whether a cat.
But I'm saying, so let's right, but I guess what I'm asking is, regardless of that, wouldn't he still have to go through? Like, is that something that's can be revoked without cause? Meaning, he wouldn't have to.
And what I'm saying is, I don't know. It's not about revocation. What I'm saying is, does the order withholding or removal on the basis of the Convention Against Torture, if that only applies to El Salvador, then it's still, he's got an order of removal that's being withheld to the extent that they could send him to El Salvador. And I just don't know whether it means, yeah, but we can send him without anything more to Honduras.
I mean, so CAT is a little different, I guess. The convention. So that's a different animal. I mean, but I guess. So it's a little bit different than that. So it's somewhere between asylum and the CAT order. But I'm just trying to figure out, yeah, I don't know. My brain hurts from thinking about this, because my thing is that, and I said this at the start of this, is that it's, there are laws in place to deport people who are in the country illegally. There's a process in place. It starts with a D and rhymes with P and stands for due process, to being removed from the country. So I just don't understand how you can go from, well, I don't know. I mean, I do understand it. They can just do it, but I don't know. I'm struggling to
Gotta
figure out.
go. I'll be back. I'll be
No,
back. I gotta go.
no, it's all right. I'm going to go soon too, but goodbye. Anyway. Okay. Yeah. I don't know, man. Yeah, I'm not sure what to make of any of this. But I do know that, let me see. They did file, and I've got to go look at yield UN, the UN filing that El Salvador made to the UN. Let me just see if we can finish this up, and then I have to go as well. Hang on.
Mr. Abrego. They did not produce the evidence to show that he is a risk to the community or a risk of flight. So if he upholds that, he could be released. And I would not be surprised, given the way this played out today, if the judge finds that she has the power to do something to protect Mr. Abrego's constitutional rights, and appellate litigation follows. But again, these are tight deadlines we're working toward. This is July 16th is just around the corner. So these questions are going to be answered very, very soon. And that's why I'm trying to be on the ground to learn those answers.
Well, I appreciate that you're doing that. There's nothing like actually seeing it in the courtroom. You just take in so much that you can't get from somebody who's live blogging, or even when there's audio access, because of course we don't have cameras in federal courts. Those of you who are longtime readers of my newsletter know that this is something of a bugaboo issue for me. I just simply fail to understand why we can't have cameras in federal courts for these important hearings, so all of us can listen in, which makes the work that you're doing super important. I think you're right to flag the appeal as the big issue here. The Fourth Circuit, notoriously conservative, is going to do what it's going to do. It's a law and order, do the right thing sort of circuit, which is the circuit that I would want to be in for a case like this. And then, of course, it goes back to the Supreme Court, which has been, I'll just say less than stellar. We saw the shadow docket decision late last week that permitted the deportation of men to South Sudan who had no ties to that country. That's a country that the State Department says it's unsafe for Americans to travel in.
Yep, that's the part. That was the Djibouti. I'm so fucking,
Apparently it's okay for us to deport people to that country. It's just sort of crazy.
Right. And they did that on the 4th of July, Joyce. It was at 7 p.m. A plane took off from a tarmac in Djibouti, on a military base in Djibouti, and delivered 8 men without notice and process, without an opportunity to complete reasonable fear interviews, testing whether they feared being killed or tortured in their destination. And that's what the Supreme Court refused to intervene and wouldn't tell us why.
Yeah, that's the part. Right? Yep. This is what the ruling class has decided will be normal, and except it's not. And so we have to continue to say that it is not normal. And that's why I think it's important for people to understand the similarities here to the treatment between our pet causes and our pet cases of United States citizens who have been, either, you know what? Actually, you're right. I think Scalia might be, which is crazy. But pick your pet U.S. citizen court case, right? Whether it's Richard Allen, Karen Reed, fucking Turtle Boy, right? Man, oh man, we want due process. We want this bullshit case against X, Y, and Z to go away. It has to be the same, constitutionally speaking, for people that this government decides are here and we can just chuck them away, first to Djibouti, then to South Sudan, without any access to the constitutional protections. And people forget that. And I hate it. And it's gotta fucking stop. It has to stop. And people need to start making these connections. You can't have due process for Karen Reed and all the fuckery going on in that executive and be angry about that and be okay with this. And if you are, you may want to sit back and rethink about what you think rule of law in the broadest sense means. Because the rule of law matters. And I don't care what executive is meting out the damage. It has to fucking stop. It is on, it's on those of us who are able to stick our necks out to actually fucking do it. I mean, it's just this. The thing is that oh Lord, it is about rule of law, not just statute. I'm not talking fucking statute law necessarily, right? Statute is in service of the rule and the idea of law. Motherfuckers. And it's bullshit. What you're hearing right now is the criminal case against Mr. Garcia is bullshit. And I would not share this video if I didn't trust Adam's reporting. And I trust him. And I know he tells it like it fucking is. And I'm going to go look at the court filings that are public. But what is happening here is a miscarriage of fucking justice. A man came to the United States in 2019 and told the government, hey, America, land of the free, home of the brave, I can't stay in El Salvador anymore because the gangs are going to fucking kill me and I'm trying to straight up get out of that life. Whatever happened in that hearing, in that interview, he got the order to withhold removal, which is somewhere between asylum and the Convention Against Torture, safety orders, right? So he went through and he did the legal thing and was not granted asylum, but was granted this other thing. The Trump administration violated that after making up bullshit, allegedly, charges against him in a criminal case to say that he's part of M13 or whatever the fuck it is and send his ass to be tortured in El Salvador. That is what your government is doing to Mr. Garcia. And it's what many people believe was done to Mr. Richard Allen. So let's not get caught up in our underwear here about what the Constitution does and does not do. What our international role and our international agreements that have been standing since fucking ever via treaties and I mean, even don't even get me started on the free trade agreements, but all of it. Our word is our word, or it's fucking not. And it doesn't matter if you think the person who is getting put through the ringer is a piece of shit or not. That piece of shit has constitutional rights in this country. Yeah. I mean, it's like we're living, yes, correct. We're the worst colony. We're the worst colony, right? I mean, just terrible. And the thing is that well, I would say that no innocent person, no guilty person, right? Before conviction. No person, because by a person who has been arrested is definitionally legally innocent, right? Just because I've been arrested doesn't mean that I am guilty. It means I'm innocent. In the eyes of the law, I am innocent. In the eyes of the law, through the jury process, Karen Reed was not guilty. She's innocent. Right? Mr. Garcia has not faced, he has not been afforded the right to his confrontation rights. He has not been afforded his due process rights. He is not convicted of a crime. He is innocent. He is here legally. He went through a process to get a withholding from removal order. It wasn't revoked. Before due process, we are all innocent. Yes, correct. Before trial, right. And you know, I mean, shit, man. Brian Koberger, I was all on the due process train. I kind of thought maybe he did it. But I was going to hear it out because innocent. Same with Luigi Mangione, right? I got an inkling he might have did some stuff, but I'll be damned if he's not innocent right now. He is legally innocent. Yeah, and you can tell him to stick it straight up their fucking ass. XOXO, right? Well, ex-Democrat let too many in. What was it? Another wise sage was telling me earlier today, do you know how many removal orders there are in the United States of America right now? Actual people that are here who have gone through due process, this due process set up in our system, as imperfect as the immigration system is, it's a train wreck, but have been afforded rights through the system and have actual pending orders for removal. Why not do that? Why not go and turn your billions of dollars into removing people who have actually gone through due process and been deemed or found to need to be deported? Let me see if I can find a figure here. Removal order. Let's see. I mean, I've never quite understood I've never quite understood. Oh my God. Let's see what their statistics are. I can't find it. Damn it. I was trying to find like an actual. Oh no. God. Hello.
I will simply assume the role of sitting here quietly and answering badly any questions.
That sounds great. So I'm just losing my mind over here. But it sounds like this is, tell me if this sounds absolutely crazy to you, Michael. What would you think if I told you that a state level government cooked up some criminal charges against somebody and renditioned them to essentially a torture chamber for, I don't know, protracted period of time without
this is entirely hypothetical, right?
Correct. Well, I was going to say, do you think I'm talking about a domestic or possible deportation case? What do you think?
I think you could have what's behind door number 1 or door number 2.
Correct. Ding, 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 ding. Yeah. And that's the thing that I'm really trying to, before we even get to guilt or innocence of anyone, I always start from the point of, okay, are we following the rules? Right? And what I was just playing, and I'm going to add it back to the stage, is that the case against Mr. Garcia is essentially kind of falling apart and was kind of falling apart at the bail hearing. And it already started to kind of look bad. And then all of a sudden he's gone. Right? So I want to finish hearing what Adam has to say.
That's why. So I think folks do have every reason to be skeptical about the rights of anyone being protected at this administration's say-so. At the same time, I think it's because the Supreme Court did not elucidate its reasoning, because Judge Zini's pointed out that her orders have been upheld largely on appeal in the past, that anything can happen. And one thing this case has been entirely unexpected from start to finish.
In some ways, this case feels like if I was going to write a parody about the Trump administration,
oh my God,
what happened today in court feels a little bit like this, because here you have the government's lawyers who come in and everything that comes out of their mouths is really incredible, starting with oh, judge, this was just a one-off mistake, nothing to look at here, even though the government has flip-flopped so many times. I mean, it just was utterly sort of a remarkable effort. I really wondered how the government lawyers were pulling it off with a straight face. And that's very much what the Trump administration does, right? I mean, they tell these incredible whoppers, but they tell them so persistently, so consistently, with such straight faces that the base falls for it. And then you've got Abrego Garcia's lawyers in court saying, Judge, none of this makes sense. And at one point, one of Mr. Abrego Garcia's lawyers, the judge had said something about asking the lawyer for the government a question. And Abrego Garcia's lawyer said, I'll just stop talking and listen, because if I can get a straight answer, it'll be the first time. You know, there's just this sense of incredulity that the Justice Department can't deliver the truth, can't deliver a reliable narrative in this situation. And of course, what's different here is that instead of the Supreme Court, we've got a federal judge who is listening to both sides and who is skeptical of the government and believes that the plaintiff's lawyers are telling the truth. And I think it's important that we say, you know, that's not to say that Mr. Abrego Garcia is a great guy. I don't know. I can't vouch for him. What I do know is he has foundational due process rights before he's deported, because if he doesn't have them, none of us have them, right? I mean, if he has no right, any of us could be picked up and that would be it.
Right. And as a matter of fact, at a press conference following the hearing, Mr. Abrego's attorney, Simon Sandoval Moshenberg, made this very point, said when he got this case, he thought this was a one-off crazy what the government is doing case. He later learned this was a tip of the spear. The third country deportations were just ramping up. And that's what makes this case important. It's not about the person of Kilmar Abrego Garcia or vouching for everything he is or everything he may or may not have done as an individual. It's about the fact that from the get-go in this case, this has been a case of the government violating a court order to hustle him onto a plane to what the judge, this particular judge, Judge Zinis, called one of the most dangerous prisons in the Western Hemisphere, a prison where he says he was tortured in truly shocking court papers.
I mean, this sounds like it could be a case that we've recently been following in some state out in the Middle West. Sort of. Hello? He's gone. I don't know where he went. What? Why are you showing up on another screen? This man. What is happening? I'm not going to add you to the stage because your camera's on and it looks like there's a ghost on the screen. Okay, this is crazy. Sorry, Michael's backstage looking like a fool here. There. All right, you back? What's happening? Oh, it's a tragedy what's happening to Michael Osbrook.
I'm here.
Okay.
I'm just having trouble with earpieces and mics and things, and
well, yeah. No, I was saying that it sounds, if one didn't know what was being described in that last like couple of minutes of the conversation between Adam and Joyce there, I mean, it sounds an awful lot like, you know, what has happened I mean, to many people in the United States, but certainly most recently and most, you know, I think crucially from an Indiana perspective is what happened to Mr. Allen, you know? So it's just, I think that that's my biggest thing, is that I hope people start to make these connections even when they're uncomfortable. You know, I think that this is an uncomfortable thing for some people, to consider. Holy shit, maybe everybody does deserve this access to the courts, and that due process isn't just a gang, right? Oh my
well,
god.
it's not a game, but you know, this is, you know, what the lawyers are doing in court is quintessential what's his name's article on bullshit.
Yes. Oh, and then he's gone again. All right, this is ridiculous. All right, well, I mean,
and finding out whether, once the government has leveled these serious allegations against him, whether he can defend himself at trial in the American way, a rule of law way. And that's what we still have as an unanswered question.
So I know a lot of people are feeling depressed. This is another one of those moments where we
Right.
worry quite legitimately that Trump has managed to break the rule of law. But I'll tell y'all, I have a different take on it that I'll share with you for what it's worth. The fact that this case was brought in the first place, and we all know the original story, right? I think 258 men. Adam, you'll correct me if I have the number wrong, but hustled out of the country, you know, with a judge just sort of trying to keep it from happening. The government persists, flies them out of the country into a Seacott prison, where they, as you say, were subject to incredible conditions that we're learning about from Mr. Abrego Garcia's filings in court. Somehow lawyers managed to figure out what's going on. They managed to file a case. We get federal judges who intervene. The case goes to the United States Supreme Court. It may not have been a fully satisfying decision, but they ordered the government to do its best to bring him back. And ultimately, you know, this is the moment that we don't talk about enough. I think the government flinched here. The government had been saying all along, sorry, he's in Bukele's custody. He belongs to El Salvador. We can't bring him back. But they did it. And they did it because they understood that they had reached the limits of the American people's tolerance. And so, yes, they...
Okay, I don't necessarily subscribe to that Pollyanna view, unfortunately. But anyway, I mean, I think that is the most aspirational way to look at this situation, is that, you know, that was hopeful, that it's hope, there's something to hope for. I mean, maybe I'm just turning into a nihilist along with an old, you know, grumpy old lady. But yeah, lawyers were able to, you know, find out what was going on, and they were able to do all of these things. But, you know, damn, how long is that gonna, you know, how long can that be kept up? And so, I don't know, it just seems exhausting to people just observing, but the people that are actually having to live through it, and people go into filing day after day. I mean, it's fucking crazy. But I don't know. That it's like what's... Go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say, I mean, it is exhausting. I mean, I don't think people realize like the endless work that these lawyers are doing, probably a lot of it late at night. There is nothing as exhausting, especially as a lawsuit, and especially one that's being done on at least a semi-emergency basis.
Yeah. 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 Absolutely. I'm just, yeah. I think that I want to go and look further into this particular case, because again, it's like I keep saying, that to see the similarities here is really critical. And that this idea that somehow being a white lady citizen, I'm certainly safer than a Hispanic guy walking down the street, or a black person walking down the street. But it's not beyond the pale to see how this can play out. I mean, look at where we are into this particular administration. At least previous administrations had the veneer of respecting court rules or the rule of law. Here, it was like pulling teeth to get the administration to comply with even kind of a half of a Supreme Court ruling. I think that's a danger. It's seriously dangerous shit. I don't know.
Well, I don't mean to get political too much on the one hand. On the other hand, law is a relatively brittle thing.
Yes.
And what people...
Wait a minute. Hold that thought for 1 minute. Because I want to say that people that don't believe, that people that don't want to get political, don't understand that we are living, that's all we're living in right now. That
I agree.
Yep.
I agree.
I know. Go ahead.
Well, no, I mean, even the judge, right? The comment, I don't need your stump speech. I mean, the campaign enters the courtroom.
Yeah.
I think what many people don't realize is that in order for the rule of law to work in anything like a reasonable way, you have to have decent people in power. And I mean, and we've got demonstrably indecent people in power.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why, I mean, whatever anybody thought of Kamala Harris, she's a decent human being. I mean, actually, she's a remarkable human being in a lot of ways.
Right.
And what's actually hilarious, the thing that came across my news feed today, was that Netanyahu has said that he's nominated Trump for the Nobel Peace Prize. And there are two things about that. One, you're going to nominate somebody for the Nobel Peace Prize for having bombed the shit out of something.
Right.
And somebody. And the other is, we have the war criminal nominating the actual criminal.
Right. Yep. Yes. But wait a minute. I thought it was the Nobel Prize in Literature. No? Sorry. I thought it was a Nobel Prize in Literature for one of his tweets.
No, I think there's probably the Pulitzer Prize for fiction.
Fucking shit. I didn't. I'm glad you were picking up what I was laying down. Yeah.
Oh, please don't use that expression. I hate it.
I'm glad you were smelling what I was stepping in. How's that?
Oh,
Jesus Christ. But it's right. But I think you're right. And I think too, you and I have talked about that. And so it's like that treads on some international law water. There's people that don't want to recognize the rulings or the findings of the International Criminal Court, much like the United States doesn't want to recognize the findings of the ICJ or the ICC. But you're right. I mean, Donald Trump is a felon who has been adjudicated as a rapist. He just is. And Netanyahu has, along with Hezbollah leaders, was indicted in the International Criminal Court. these two things are these are just truths. These are true things that happened. And I think that, you know, people need to understand that there's talking about facts that actually happen within the political sphere, and then there's bullshit. What I just said, those three things about the ICC, the criminal case, and the civil case against Trump, those are all things that happened. Well, you can go and reference them through various databases. That doesn't mean anything except we are dealing with, to your point, demonstrably uh, people of low character. And the thing that I would say about um, people that are decent human beings, the only no, there's been no president or no administration that could escape some form of my wrath. But the point is that when, you know, if we were to have had a Harris presidency or whoever, right? Who the fuck ever, there would have at least been the acquiescence to the law and allowing that to continue unabated. You know, certainly they could make their cases. They did. Yeah, Biden's DOJ and representatives did a lot of shit I was not fond of. A lot of shit internationally, specifically. But at the end of the day, decent people with integrity, professionals, you know what I mean? Just professionals were at least minding the store long enough to get us through whatever crisis was happening. The thing is, we don't have that. We don't have that backstop here. We just don't. With the Trump administration. So it's you know, I don't know if you heard the Stacy Abrams 10 Steps to Autocracy that she sort of laid out. But it's important, I think, to listen to it because we're at the penultimate phase here. And what the administration is doing, and all but a very few within his own party are pushing back against. It's dangerous shit to a system that many of us have taken for granted for way too long, and it can just go away.
Well, we haven't had somebody as indecent as this guy since Andrew Johnson.
What did Andrew Johnson do?
Oh, he was a virulent racist. He was terrible. I mean, he was just. I mean, there was a lot of corruption in the Grant administration, but it wasn't Grant. I mean, it was the people around him, and you know, you can say, well, the buck stops there, but I'm talking about the person themselves. I mean, we just haven't had somebody who beyond the pale. And whoever. I wouldn't have been happy if Mitt Romney had defeated Obama, but I wouldn't have despaired for the Republic.
Yes. Right. Right. That's the thing. Yes.
I don't agree. I don't agree about almost anything, although I do agree with Liz Cheney about a few things. But if Liz Cheney had been up, I'd have voted for her instead of Trump. And
what did that old syphilitic electric guy, what's his name, Ben Franklin, what did he come up with? That it's a republic if you can keep it? Maybe that was the syphilis talking.
I don't think old Ben had syphilis, but
he didn't. I thought he did. Oh my God, am I spreading shade on?
He lived well. Yeah, I don't think. If you could know, and I'm not saying you're wrong. It's the first I've ever heard of it.
Oh my God.
And
Am I spreading rumors?
So Ron Chernow has a new biography of Franklin out, so we can look there.
Syphilis. Ah, damn it. There is no credible evidence. His medical records don't mention it. Huh. That's a shame. Nope. No sexually transmitted diseases for Ben. But I mean, I think that your point is well taken, that you would not have despaired for the Republic. And that's, yeah, I get it. I mean, I would have voted for either Cheney, right? I mean, my God, I'm talking about voting for Darth Vader. No, I'm not. But it's, I mean, we've had some, I don't know. Maybe it's time to just roll up the steps to the double wide and just call it a day, America.
Yeah, I don't think so. I think it's going to be a bloodbath. I think it's going to be a bloodbath if we can get to November of 2026.
Oh, God.
And I think, look, well, I mean, things have changed, but one of my favorite things Twain said was that the difference between the United States and Europe was that the United States had no institutional criminal class except for Congress.
Well, yeah.
But that said, I mean, Congress is in a position to stop all of this.
I know.
And that's what is going to probably have to happen, and people are going to have to take to the streets. And I don't know how else you do it. Tom Nichols, who's terrific, I think. After Trump was elected, said, well, the dogs have said they want the food. Let them eat it for a while.
Yeah. And I mean, that's a tough, it's so hard to, yes, I know. And you and I talked about this. It's hard to sit in that. But, when you get everything that you asked for, I guess this is sort of the end result.
Well, the problem is the American people, frankly, the majority voted for this guy. I'm not here saying that the election was stolen.
No, absolutely not. That's what I'm saying. It's like, this is what we wanted, I guess.
But the one difference for, Trump 2.0 and Trump 1.0 for me, at least, is, and this goes back to the rule of law stuff. It's really, it's not about any of the other stuff, really. It's, the first time I can give people, I mean, it's incomprehensible, but I can give people a pass for wanting, I don't know, something wildly different, something, whatever. But the second time around, I'm sorry. And if there are people in your chat who voted for Trump, I apologize. But
don't apologize.
I do not. I actually do not view anyone who voted for Trump as a fellow citizen.
Yeah.
I just don't.
The first time or the second time? Because
that's not the. I felt people maybe were deluded and wanted something, the system wasn't working for them, and so in a way they voted to blow up the system because the system wasn't working. But this time around, after everything that we know about Trump and the trials, the $400 million, I think it is, and fraud stuff to the state of New York.
Yeah, tell me about it. Yep.
I just how on what planet can you vote for somebody like that?
Well, and to be
I'm sorry.
so to be fair, let's be fair, right? I personally don't have any thing to do with people who voted for Donald Trump this time around at all. And that includes painfully some of my own relatives. But there's a line, right? That I'm just not willing to cross. But let's look at, and I maintain that journalism and lawyering have a lot of similarities, many more similarities than differences. And similarities too, I think probably some our friends in the defense bar get a bad rap for defending scumbags, just like journalists get a bad rap for, quote, fake news. No, that's neither of those things were true. Now, I can't say the same thing for journalism anymore because I don't even recognize it. There is no wide, there is no sort of structure to it anymore. I'm not saying that's a bad thing. I'm saying that is a thing and that media has been corporatized. So there was a Pew study done in the last run up to the election. Sorry, the whatever it was, 2020. And the majority of people who lived in the hinterlands, and when I say hinterlands, I mean outside of metropolitan areas, no matter where it is, upstate New York, middle of it, nowhere, Iowa, got their news from local, your local 6 o'clock or 10 o'clock news. So whether it's, WHO TV in Des Moines or, whatever it is in Indiana, that's how most people got their world and national news. Now, aside from that is infotainment. And so that's where the whole Trump thing comes in, right? He was Mr. Failed steak magnate, failed airline magnate, joke, huge Democratic Party supporter, and happened to capture the incredibly low expectations of the American public, and there was an incredibly low voter turnout the first time he got elected as well, because nobody liked Hillary Clinton, whatever. But, here we are. And I think that saying you don't consider Trump voters as fellow citizens, I think is valid. Because my thing is that anybody that is going to vote for me to not have health insurance, or for my daughter to lose her bodily autonomy, or, name it, any of it. My husband, Brown, what are you going to do? Deport him? I mean, the thing is that when people that I care about vote against my interests, not thinking that it's going to impact them personally, it's hard not to think, well, I guess maybe all y'all are getting a little something that you deserve. And I totally feel.
Well, so I think it came out maybe after the second Bush election, maybe after 2004. There was a guy who wrote a book called What's the Matter with Kansas? And it might have come out after the first Bush election.
Yep.
Mm-hmm. And the premise of the book, the question of the book was, why do all these people vote for things that are against their own interests?
Right.
And I don't have an answer. I mean, I really don't.
I could venture a guess, but probably has something to do with the other. fear of not being in positions of power. There's plenty of things I could come up with, but I think that has kind of, it's always kind of been out there. But I do think that the media has failed, and I don't mean journalists have failed in this, because I think that, again, these two things are not separate for me. Like, rule of law can't exist without watchdog and oversight. When I was reporting on the Cambodian election in 2018, and the biggest indicator that Cambodia was going down in flames. I mean, there had been rumblings that Hun Sen was going to install himself as de facto dictator, sort of like Museveni in Uganda and all this other shit, right? It was starting to come down the pike, and I was there reporting, and it was the journalists who were targeted. It was lawsuits filed against press outlets claiming that they owed back taxes. All of this other shit that goes before a fall. Now, granted, there were some political assassinations, much like there was in Minnesota a couple weeks ago, that nobody's fucking talking about. So in Cambodia, so what happened? Yes, sure, there was an election, but there hasn't been one since. And, Hun Sen was a member of the Khmer Rouge party, and was flushed back into power in part, by arrangement, but there was the semblance and the beginnings of a Republican form of government and a relative level of freedom, and for literally the people. And I was there when it was ending, and to see people that I knew who had been working at Phnom Penh Post or Cambodia Daily, literally rolling up their shit because they had been shut down by some fake tax bill. And Hun Sen, by the way, was quoting Donald Trump. Fake news. He was saying all the things that Phnom Penh Post and Cambodia Daily were reporting about him was, quote, fake news. And I wrote a story about it for one of those crappy outlets because I'm a washed up fucking cunt journalist. But it was fucking true. And that's what happens. People start getting assassinated, like Melissa, is it Hodson? God damn it. I can't remember her last name, in Minnesota. And her husband were assassinated by a right-wing lunatic who was anti-abortion 2 weeks ago. We're not hearing shit about it. Plus, the way the press has been denigrated and pounded into a pulp and is viewed as a thing to be reviled and a bunch of fucking liars, when, no, I'm sorry, you're thinking of the White House. You're thinking of the White House press secretary. So I think these things go hand in glove, right?
Yeah, there's no question, the importance of the press, and calling bullshit on stuff matters. I mean, go back to the Pentagon Papers.
Yep.
And Watergate,
Panama Papers. Yep. Mm-hmm.
And Iran-Contra.
Yep. You bet your ass.
And they kind of fell down a little bit on the second Iraq War, but
yeah.
But at least as far as the rule of law goes, they absolutely have a role in watching what the government does so that we don't have to.
Yeah.
And calling them out when they're doing indecent things. And look, I've got a friend who goes on, rants about hypocrisy, and I mean, he's very hard line about stuff. And, my attitude is, look, I think everybody's, well, I'll speak for myself. I won't speak for everybody. I am sure that I have principles that I violate. If somebody looked at me, they'd say, well, you say that's the principle of yours, well, you do this, and so you're a fucking hypocrite.
Mhm.
I'm not saying that either party or any politician is consistent, and it's just, that's why you've got to have decent people in
Mhm.
office. Yeah, there's going to be hypocrisy,
You
but
bet.
in the end, you want somebody with a sense of decency, and that is one thing we know the current president does not have.
Correct.
And neither do many of the people around him.
That's right. That's right. I mean, it's disturbing.
Look at Hogseth's behavior. I mean,
Oh
that's
my God.
just
Oh my God.
Hegseth. Sorry. I mean, Tulsi Gabbard. I mean,
I know.
Syria.
I know.
I mean, just North Korea.
Yep.
I mean, just these people, and Rubio. I mean, right, the grown up in the room who has completely changed his tune. I mean, that is hypocrisy. That is hypocrisy that matters.
Yes, and that's dangerous, right? So that's weaponized. So there's political hypocrisy. That's politics in general. And when I say politics, I mean the actual politicking. That is inherent, unfortunately, in the job, I think, right? But there's a difference between this militia, like this bait and switch almost, right? Because what you just said is this sort of idea that Rubio was the adult in the room, and no, he's not. He sat there like, oh God, I just no. I think that if we make it this far, I mean, we don't even really have a functioning or a constitutional court that makes actually constitutionally sound decisions, in my opinion.
Well,
Or
and that's where. Well, and I wanted to go there, if I can interrupt you for just a second, and that
yep,
is that, yeah, it comes back to the Supreme Court, who are entirely a bunch of hypocrites.
yeah,
I mean, especially the right wing side of it. I'm not saying the left wing's immune, but the whole Second Amendment thing, saying there's a private, based on, so we've got these originalists, right,
mm-hmm.
who do this whole history thing in Heller, and it actually has nothing to do with the actual history. I
Right,
mean, it is fake news.
right,
And if the Supreme Court is willing to do that, I wanted to say that, you kind of hope that the courts are the place where fake news won't fly.
right.
But the Supreme Court and this whole originalism thing is, I'm
Yeah.
look, it's people.
Yeah. I mean, I think I told you that the one time I was in the Supreme Court in the gallery was when Citizens United came down, and there was a gleeful Mitch McConnell wandering around, and I point to that because it feels like that was a real. That was like that was one of the watersheds in recent memory of the way that the Supreme Court then went on to get in on the buying and selling of indulgences. When you have Clarence Thomas has no business being in the court. Impeach him. We have means to do this. You could make arguments for some of these other folks to be shown the door, because of, or at the very least, recuse yourself from sitting in something that you might have an actual interest in. It's like what?
Well, but it's more indecent people, right? I mean,
I know.
that's what
Yeah.
it is.
Yeah.
And it's, not to, here's a hypothetical for you. You have a prosecutor in a small town where everybody knows everybody else, and actually the prosecutor is actually in the Masons Lodge with one of the suspects.
Shit.
And like, what does a decent person do? Well, a decent person gets a special prosecutor.
Right.
Well,
they got a special judge.
Yeah, that's only because the original judge was real special in his own way.
Oh my God. Woo. Yeah. I mean,
I'm just saying, look, if you have indecent people in positions of power, people are going to suffer, period.
Yeah.
And the higher up they are, the more people there are going to be who are going to suffer.
Yeah.
And now we have, at the pinnacle of power in this country, an entire congeries of really indecent people.
I think that you would probably call them turds in the punch bowl. No?
Well,
think about it. My God, right? What's worse than going to, say, a social like on Sunday, and you get to the punch bowl and you're like, my God, I could kill for some punch. And there's a bunch of turds in it. That's America. Thoughts?
Let me say, I can't improve upon that.
You can neither confirm nor deny that statement, but I resemble that statement.
Well, I guess the problem. I mean, all metaphors break down at some point, and I guess the point I would make is that, like, I don't think the punch is ruined yet.
Well, you can certainly dip your crystal goblet into an unturdified area, but you're still going to have a whiff of Del Poop. I don't know. Yeah. I mean, I still have, I guess I still have, listen, I guess I will still partake of the semi soiled punch, but I don't know, man. It's going to be like holding on for dear life for a while, and it's not going to be everybody's lives. So I mean, but when you talked about having people in the pinnacle of power, I think that people inherently search for, well, what can I do? What can I do? I feel helpless and I feel hopeless, and I get that. But I do think that I see flickers of hope at the hyper local level. And I do think that that counts for something. And that there are people who are, through whatever means, whether it's understanding that, oh, I can vote for my school board, or, oh, crap, I have to hold my elected prosecutor accountable. Oh, shit, this, and that. Those things happen at, the hyper local, level. And I think that that's really, that's where this thing is going to reside for a while, to give people some sort of feeling that they can actually do something about it until unless and until we can finally do something that shifts some good, or at least some decent humans back into positions of power.
Yeah, sure, they're the state courts, state governments, but the rule, how the federal government, how badly the federal government can screw us over is going to depend a lot on the federal courts, and who knows? Yes, it just, again, I just go back to I don't want to make this purely political. The point really is about the rule of law, and the rule of law does not, it's not a thing, it's not a thing that runs itself. And the words are pretty brittle. Look what they've done. I listened to the birthright citizenship arguments.
Oh God. Yeah.
And
Mm-hmm.
and the argument for the argument for the Trump administration, the guy with a straight face was saying the word jurisdiction in the 14th Amendment meant something more than just jurisdiction. It's political jurisdiction, political affiliation.
What?
Well, and like people were listening to. You should have had 9 black robes laughing themselves sick.
Oh God. I did not listen to that.
And and look, even if there is a semi-interesting historical argument for that,
Mm-hmm.
that law is so well settled.
Yeah.
And has been for so long.
Right.
That it's like, no, you don't do anything to that.
Right.
It's kind of like saying, so we got this useless bone in our body, the end of our tailbones, at least people say it's useless. Yeah, but you can't get rid of it. It's left there by evolution. Yeah, we're descended from folks who had tails, but we don't have tails anymore. But we still got the vestiges of tails. But you're not getting rid of that. It's been around so long.
Right.
But
that's part of this. But I think people. But again, you're right, and it's there is supposed to be a certainty to law, especially. There's a reason why during appointments to the Supreme Court, people ask things like, "Do you believe in stare decisis?" Well, they all said sure, but they big old liars who lie. But that is part of what makes the rule of law the rule of law. There has to be a certain finality and certitude to it. Now, I'm not saying that things, if they are just flatly unconstitutional, I'm talking about in the case of the birthright citizenship thing. You're right, that is well and truly settled law. And so to even broach that subject causes such unrest, even in the psyche, right? Because I don't think people really understand what that actually would mean in practice. So it's there's with no certainty at all in at least one of the branches that's supposed to be the steady hand of the Constitution and about meting out some form of equitable justice. It's deeply unsettling to see the court just be completely off the rails.
Well, look,
they're not completely off the rails,
I don't like the opinion, but
they do get to choose what
and then
they take up, though, right? They do get to choose what they take up, right?
Yeah, they do. But I just wanted to go to the stare decisis point. Yes, Roe and Casey. So Roe was 50 years old.
Yes.
Yeah, 50 years old.
Yep.
Casey was 30 years old.
Yep.
At the same time, I mean, Casey was a plurality opinion. Roe, I mean, I don't know if you know the story about Roe and the Shermy Award.
I know everything about Roe.
So, well, then you know that the clerks every year back then got together and awarded the Shermy Award. And the Shermy Award was named after Sherman Minton, the only justice to have come from Indiana.
Oh my God.
And they gave the award to what they thought was the worst
Worst
opinion,
case. Yeah.
the worst opinion of the term. And they just couldn't bring themselves to give it to Roe. And there hasn't been a Shermy Award since, I don't believe.
Well, I
Roe
think
is
I know where you're going. Yes.
Roe was a terrible fucking opinion.
Yep.
They didn't have the nerve, and they may not have had the votes to simply say a fetus is not a person.
Right.
They came up with this framework out of nowhere. I'm not saying it wasn't sensible, but you know, I'm not saying it wasn't sensible, but you know, I think a lot of the people who say, you know, it's a pity that that Roe happened because it could have been fought out politically in the states. I think they may be right.
Sure.
Um,
but hang on a second. So let me just, I think I understand but the difference in stare decisis, I think that there's, a terrible opinion notwithstanding, right? Terrible opinion notwithstanding. But it has to be something that doesn't disrupt the absolute fabric of the way that people live their lives. And there is an argument to be made where, I mean, there's a difference between the stare decisis of a bad opinion and birthright citizenship, right? There's a huge gulf between how you view, in my opinion, the stare decisis of both of those for different reasons. So I think that the upheaval that caused, the overturning of the Roe decision, no matter how crappy it was and how weird and arbitrary it was, and oh yeah, hey, fucking Equal Rights Amendment, let's just keep on going on down the road. But the thing is that had become everybody's day-to-day life. And when that was ended, that threw women into chaos and it has killed people. That needs to be a part of the calculation from a justiciability perspective.
well, not from a justiciability perspective. It's justiciable, but from people.
What's the word I'm looking for?
A jurisprudential perspective, if you're going to, in other words, when you're looking into overturning, I mean, there's a whole framework that the court has for overturning, you know, pretty well settled precedents. And you know, I think you're absolutely right. Like how interwoven in the society are, and I think the settled expectations of people.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah.
And I think but I think too that I don't think people know the history of like Citizens United and how it has its history in anti-abortion law. You know, I mean, that was the germ of, you know, the Wisconsin, you know, quote unquote, right to life shit. Anyway, my point is that I do think that, that when you start, you know, there's also like in international law, there is the argument that you can make that if a state, and when I say state for people, I mean country. So when a state acts or says, or a state's head of state makes a statement or acts in a consistent manner over a period of time, and this is the same in like some forms of contract law, I think, is that there's an expectation that is going to continue. And so that would be something that was it was clearly a political move to both of these things, pushing back against birthright citizenship and pushing and overturning Roe are demonstrably political on their face. And so, I don't, and that's why I think that when people say, I don't want to get into politics, well, everything in our government is politics, including court decisions. And so I think that we have to try to disabuse ourselves of this notion that talking about politics is verboten, right? It's not. It's just.
Yeah. The courts are clearly politics by other means.
Yes. Right.
No, but to go back to the Citizens United thing, I mean, you may disagree with the people, the abortion rights. I mean, I got to say, if I thought a widespread practice in the society were murder, I might be try to be doing something about it.
Sure.
Yep. And the anti-abortion folks, going back to the even late 70s, started working the system, started working the courts. I mean, it's no different historically from the NAACP in the late 40s and 50s, and then in the 50s, coming up with litigation strategies for civil rights.
Well, yes. One could. I'm not now that. I think that's conflating.
Well, they came up with a strategy to undo Plessy.
Yes.
They came up with a strategy to undo Plessy. And the anti-abortion folks came up with a strategy eventually to undo Roe.
Moral majority, baby. Yeah. I mean, and James Bopp. Do you happen to know James Bopp? Is he a good friend of yours?
Yeah. Right. Yes, I know. I know who. Yeah.
But I mean, you're right. So in and of themselves, I mean, like ALEC exists, right? I mean, pumping out test balloon cases has been going on forever. But I think that the thing is that now it's just so out in the open, trying to undo birthright citizenship or, the overturning of Roe v. Wade, and in the waning days of, we couldn't even get the ERA passed, which I think some really, really sharp lawyers could still make a case that that's actually been deposited and been ratified. People just don't think around the edges like that enough, I don't think, to push that envelope, or we're just so lulled into this space of thinking, well, it's been done this way. This is how we do it. And I do think that there are rules and those kinds of things in place, but I think that there's a lot more flexibility in thinking around the edges of case law versus procedure, if that makes any sense. So I guess I don't even know what the fuck we're talking about anymore. Why did we start?
We're talking about the rule of law, and then we've got these immigration cases, which are just, as far as I can tell, I mean, they're Guantanamo level off charts.
Yep.
I mean, Guantanamo was the Bush administration's attempt to get around the habeas statutes, and in the end, they couldn't get around common law habeas.
Yes, right, which is, as we've established, the lowest bar.
Well, except the court stepped in, and the Supreme Court did step in Boumediene, and there's the other case whose name is escaping me, and basically said, The fact that they're in Guantanamo doesn't mean, I mean, it's completely controlled. No, you can't escape this. Now, they may not be subject to the habeas statutes, but these military tribunals have to
Yes.
have some sort of
Yep.
minimal due process.
Right.
But the court didn't have to say that. They could have on fairly firm legal ground said, no, they're not in the United States. I mean, if they'd been if they'd been at the air base in Kandahar, or
Yeah.
I'm sorry, not Kandahar, if they'd been at the air base in Kabul, whatever it was called, if they've been or they've been in Abu Ghraib in Iraq then.
But that would fall under different circumstances though too, right?
I mean, they're different in the sense that they're different in the sense that Guantanamo is rented
Right. Yes.
from Cuba, but they're not different in the sense that they're not on United States territory.
Right. But it does the same thing though, right? It does the same thing of renditioning someone to the far-flung islands of the colonies to not have their day in court. It is.
Well, except you don't have to rendition somebody, so they could have snatched up people in Afghanistan, which they did.
Yeah.
And they could have just left them there in prisons there, and nobody would say they've been renditioned. They're just there, and I guarantee you, the Supreme Court would have said nothing about habeas in them.
Right.
And in fact, the government did itself a disservice by doing the Guantanamo thing. They should have set it up in Afghanistan.
Well, I mean, okay, we're treading into like law different. I mean, I don't know.
The restraints on the federal government are extremely weak, especially if Congress isn't willing to do anything.
Well, was this still okay? So, but when you talk about Afghanistan, are you still talking about? I guess I'm having trouble keeping my wars straight. It wasn't technically a war, right?
Well, no, I mean, there's the use of force thing, but there was no, but it's a battlefield. So they were claiming these people are enemy combatants picked up on the battlefield. I mean, a lot of it was bullshit. Some of it wasn't. And if they just kept them in Afghanistan, I guarantee you, Boumediene would never happen.
Yeah.
The courts are not going to get involved with, POWs kept in foreign countries. The only thing that made Guantanamo kind of suspicious was we're renting the place.
Well, I mean, if only we subscribe to some international rule of law.
Well, we do. There's the Geneva Convention, which we do. But
yeah, right. I don't even get me started on the Geneva Conventions and how we don't. I know. Makes me crazy.
But so the courts can do a little, but in the end, it really is going to look. Congress could end the tariffs tomorrow.
Oh, what happened with South Korea? Because I got a bone to pick with the Treaty Department.
I don't know. I don't know enough about treaties and things, but I just don't. And for the most part, I don't care.
How dare you? Oh, it's one of my favorite things.
Yeah, well, you're just more international than I am. I got enough. Look, I'm just a habeas corpus. As I was telling you earlier when we were talking about the history of habeas, from my practice, I know a little of this and a little of that about the history, and maybe more than a lot of people, but certainly not as much as some some very serious scholars out there. I mean, for me, habeas is a frigging tool. I use it, I use it as I find it. And I'm not a revolutionary bomb thrower. I'm just, use what we got, and what we got is the courts, and we've got Congress to work against these people. And I don't know what else you do. And the streets. I mean, yes, you can go out and demonstrate. No King's Day, but the rule of law is going to depend on, in the end, what happens to a bunch of immigrants is going to depend on the insistence on decency.
Yeah. Yeah. No, absolutely. And the thing is that that's what it boils down to. And that's why I go so far out of my way to make, to not comment on guilt or innocence per se. And why I bring this up in the context of immigrants is because, again, in this particular case that we were talking about, there were some allegedly bullshit adjacent charges that had been used to hold Mr. Garcia until the Trump government could literally get rid of him along with, a couple hundred others, and send them on their way without access to the rights every single person, not just citizen, every single person has in the country. And that, as it plays out, in whether it's in these immigration cases or in the Richard Allen case or in the Karen Reed case or in any of the cases that people like to follow or are interested and passionate about, I think that it's really important for people to start thinking really laterally about these things, that there are commonalities among these cases, and it's abuse of power. And with that comes there's not having access to the courts, and whether that's through actual access or just actual access, due process access, access to a counsel or consulate. It's a huge issue that people take for granted, and just can't. You just can't. And it's, I don't know. I mean, I think I'm going to go start observing immigration courts, because I'm like, I got to do something. I'm feeling pretty like untethered at the moment, but yeah, I don't know.
Your audience may not realize, or they may.
My audience of 18.
Well, yeah, I mean, 18 is 18. It's bigger than my classes.
Not bigger than YouTube.
The immigration courts, those are administrative law justices. They are employees of the Justice Department.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
I mean, so the whole immigration court thing is the Justice Department trying this stuff for the government.
Correct.
It's the executive branch trying cases for the executive branch.
Yeah. But I guess my point is, yes, it is. It's an administrative court, absolutely. But
with very limited review.
Yes, which is why you need observers. Yeah.
Well,
you do. You need observers. I mean, at least here in New York, one of the guys that was running for mayor, I don't even care if it was a political stunt, but he went down there and he got detained because he was like, you can't, he was, spitting law at these masked ICE agents, right? And it's like, first of all, take off your mask. Second of all, you can't do this here. There's something to be said about those acts of civil disobedience. And
yeah, a lot. I mean, look what civil disobedience got Gandhi, and yes, when the dogs find out that the food is making them barf, then,
yes, yeah,
then maybe we'll get some action. But uh, this started out about the immigration cases, and I don't want to take it. I mean, we've gone very far afield from them, but I don't think in a way that what we've talked about is far afield
no, it's not.
from them. It's just,
Mm-mm.
I I'm going to repeat myself, and then I'm going to get off, and that is, there's no substitute for decency.
Right. Right.
And even decent people do indecent things. I don't deny that, but it's not pervasive. Often it may be accidental or unintentional, but people who are, I mean, the people in power now are actually malicious.
Yes. Yeah.
And
And
they have, yeah.
well, no, and I can say too, though, but again, to bring it to a more hyper local level that people, are following. It's the same thing that happens, in Norfolk County, right? People that have been watching what the DA has been doing there and running roughshod. I mean, it's not a, it's a pretty it's a good analog at a local level. It's the same kind of thing. The power of the government running roughshod over not just the rights, but then the courts being complicit, and it's all a piece. And yeah, and I'm gonna go. My daughter just sent me a text saying she's got some scorching hot tea to tell me, so I'm very excited. Yeah, I don't know if we've.
Okay. Well, thanks for the opportunity. I feel like I've blathered, but
So have I. So whatever. I'll see you next Tuesday.
okay.
You get it?
Thanks.
All right. You know what, everybody? This was ridiculous. I can't even wait to see this regurgitated out there in the mean streets. All right. Listen, I got to go. I just want you all to know that I